you're going to head to the Turtle Hospital. The Turtle Hospital is an amazing place where they are rescuing and rehabilitating sea turtles. When possible, the sea turtles are released back into the wild, which is always the best outcome. If it is not possible, then they do have a forever home at the Turtle Hospital. So we're lucky to have Chrissy joining us backstage. I'm going to bring Chrissy in live with us right now. Here she comes. Hey, Chrissy, how are you?
Hello. Hi. Good morning, or afternoon, or evening, wherever you're from. Welcome to Turtle Hospital. I'm
All
going to tell
right,
you about some of
Chrissy.
these turtles, why they're here. You know, these turtles, they've been around for millions of years, these turtles. And these are green ones you see before me here that cannot be returned back to the ocean because of their injuries. Boats sailing out in the water sometimes, or power boating, they hit the turtles and they get something called bubble butt syndrome. And what happens is air gets trapped inside their shell and they float. It's like putting a life jacket on. With a life jacket on, they can't go back to the wild, but they can stay here at the hospital. And so what we do is we put these lead weights on their shell. You can see these round disc and odd shaped bars in the back of the turtle shell, and it makes the turtles more stable in the water. Sometimes they also become paralyzed because the spine of the turtle is also connected and they can't move their back flippers. Not all of them get paralyzed, but some of them do. But with this air, they can't go back, and they actually help save the other turtles because they can also be our blood donors. Green turtles, we see a lot of them. They like to hang out in the shallower grass bed areas. They're not so much in deeper water, and so fishermen and stuff sometimes accidentally hit them. Sometimes we get turtles that come in with entanglements too. Some of the turtles have been entangled with fishing line or ropes and stuff like that, and they lose flippers due to those injuries. Sometimes we get turtles for shark attacks. This turtle here has an amazing story, though. Her name is Hanson Bowie, actually. She was rescued 7 years ago, but when she came in, she also had a bit of jewelry on her flipper. It's something called a flipper tag, and it's got letters and numbers on one side. The other side says reward to the biology department of, and flipper tags are known worldwide. And when she came in, we found out she was here before. She was here in 1994 as a hatchling. I like to call the hatchlings nuggets because they're about the size of a chicken McNugget when they come in. She was the size of a hatchling. From 1994 to 1997, for 3 years, she was under something called a fibropapilloma tumor study. And I'll go over that a little bit more in a minute. And she was released in November 97, and she only weighed 35 pounds. Well, she's close to probably 385 now, making her our largest turtle here at the hospital. But in the 36-year history of this hospital, we've actually only had 3 turtles ever returned back to the hospital. 2 of them were loggerheads, and she's the first green. It's nice seeing her without these tumors now, where she's kind of built up an immune system. But unfortunately, she was hit by something, so she does have that bubble butt syndrome or positive buoyancy disorder. I also have April here, who's blind, lost his sight due to tumors. And down there underneath it is Montel. If anything bad can ever happen to one of our turtles, it's happened to Montel. There's only half a front flipper there. Lost a flipper due to a shark attack, other flipper due to fishing line. There's a notch in the side where it's hit by a boat, and Montel's missing an eye due to tumors. So with all that drama in poor Montel's life, we hope the rest of Montel's life will be drama-free here. It is breakfast time here at the hospital. They just were fed, so they're still looking for more food. Green turtles are kind of like the cows of the ocean. They just forage on grass beds and algae all day long, so they're constantly feeding all the time. These tanks are like what we call our own personal hospital bed, where most of them are going through different stages of care. And what it is, we have a lot of these green turtles that are very young. We call them juveniles. Some are between a toddler and a teenager, and they don't really have an immune system built up yet. So when they start feeding on toxic grass beds, swimming in toxic water, it breaks down their immune system, and they break out into something called a herpes-like virus. It's a fibropapilloma tumor, and it grows in a cauliflower shape around their eyes. They can't see, mouths they can't eat, and flippers they can't swim. And we'll do surgeries to remove these tumors. Then they'll be like 3 months, 6 months to a year, tumor-free, without any regrowth of tumors, and then they get to go back to the wild. This is the number one thing we see here. It's not always boat strikes. And this is Dude. And the funny thing is, too, the people who rescue him actually name them. And Dude has a little chunk out of the side of him there, and his flippers are not symmetrical. A lot of times when they're hatchlings, birds will pick at them. Birds' beaks are scissor sharp, and they'll take all these chunks out of them, and it never grows back in. They're just left with a bunch of scars. I like to call these guys my Beast of Beauty stories, though, because you'll notice Giovanni here. And if you look at her intake picture, she had a big old tumor around her flipper there and around the back of her. But this is the number one thing we treat here. We also get little ones in, too. We're going to go around to the little hatchlings. These turtles here in these individual tanks we have plans on sending them back out to the wild once they are fully tumor free. I got Sherry here. And I have Happy here. I believe Happy went and saw the eye doctor yesterday. When the tumors are covering their eyes, it makes like a sad and depressed turtle. They don't want to swim and they don't want to eat. So our turtles actually go see a veterinarian ophthalmologist. And she'll remove the tumors from their eyes and put them on cancer eye drops. And twice a day they get taken out of the tank for eye drops. And twice a month we compile like 5 turtles in the ambulance. And they all get to go on a field trip to Miami to the eye doctor. But they have to have one fully good working eye in order to return back to the ocean. She's probably been able to save a lot more eyes. Over here I have some cuties. And these two are going to be with us for 2 years. I have Tater and Tot down there. They are loggerhead turtles. And they are going to be our ambassadors here at the hospital. By the time that these guys are born, only 1 in 1,000 will make it to adulthood. You know, birds, crab, baitfish, sharks, everything wants to eat them. So we will care for them for 2 years. When they go back to the wild, the only predator they'll have to worry about are sharks. Then I have a dahlia here who was washed in after this tropical storm. We just had a dahlia this past summer. I had a little one there that's a little deformed. They don't always make it out of the nest. It takes 50 to 70 days for a nest to hatch. 3 days after the nest hatches, nesting surveyors, park rangers will go out, open the nest, count the eggs. Sometimes you find babies in it. A couple more there. And over here, I have 2 little green turtles. Oops, hold on. I got a little string they're going to try to eat. All right. These tanks, we keep them covered because they're still lunch size to a bird or a raccoon. This is Theodore. Theodore is a very curious little turtle. Very cute little green turtle. Had toxins, whether it be to red tide or some kind of algae bloom that was going on out there. It had toxins, and as well as squirt there. We get a lot of squirts. But they're just young, juvenile green turtles. Very young at that. And over here, I have a little baby green turtle as well. He is just a tiny little one. And this one's got your lunch is on your back, dude. Wait, there you go. These little guys are in what I call timeout pens. And that's because they're getting big enough that they don't know how to use their words. And it's kind of funny to say that way. But they live in the Sargasso seaweed patches, these big floating patches out in the ocean. It's full of their baby food, like snails and jellyfish and bivalves. Well, what do these little plastic pieces look like to these turtles in the water? They look like jellyfish. And so a lot of these guys eat a bunch of trash and don't make it because of all the trash they eat, unfortunately. And here at the hospital, once they get a little bit bigger, because they're like babies and babies are used to feeding all the time, they'll start tasting each other. They'll bite each other like, oh, let me taste your nose. Let me taste your tail. Let me taste your flipper. And loggerheads actually have very powerful jaws. But for such a big turtle, they get to be like 450 pounds. They have a tiny brain. Even when they're fully grown, their brain is only the size of your thumb. So they pretty much know food, and that's pretty much their biggest thing, is to how to avoid predators and find food. Then I got this little one here who hasn't quite passed his swim test. He seems to swim in circles. Not sure if it's some neurological thing going on with him, but he is getting a little stronger. At first we thought maybe it was a flipper issue, but he does swim in circles. He hasn't quite passed that swim test yet, so that's why he's in a basket. I got a bunch more there too. But these tumors on the turtles, I'm going to show you Hank here. Hank has had quite a few surgeries to go. You'll notice in the back there, a lot of the tumors, his flippers are covered. He has seen the eye doctor, and that is due to the pollution, like I said, that we dump pesticides, fertilizers, oil spills, suntan lotions, plastics, all this stuff in the ocean. And they just breaks down their immune system. And we have to remove the tumors, and then we'll treat them with things like honey, antibiotics, vitamins. No, the string is stuck, and stuff like that. And I'm going to tell you how you can find or spot a sick turtle too. So sea turtles are air breathers. They have to come to the surface to breathe air, and when they're not feeling well, they're going to hang out close to the surface. And photosynthesis sets in, and algae will start growing on their shell, and so they develop a whole habitat because they're also moving very slow. They'll get worms and leeches, leech eggs, snails, crabs, barnacles, and coral even on their shell. And I'll show you one of them we just had come in. We're going to go up top. We have sections of turtles. Like I said, these smaller tanks are like their personal hospital bed. But I do want to show you Oakley, who came in. She was so covered in fur of algae. She literally had a whole habitat on her shell. She even had sand, she had barnacles, she had leeches. And it's a bit of a rainy day here. It hasn't been as pretty. Well, good morning, Stephanie. But Oakley here, she looks a lot different. That's why I call her my Beastie Beauty story. So this is what Oakley looked like when she came in. She had a full growth of fur going on her there of algae. She looks a lot better now. So when you normally if you come upon a sea turtle, its first instinct for the turtle should be to swim away. However, you do hear of them being curious animals from time to time. And so if you see it covered in algae and floating at the surface and full of tumors, we do want to encourage you to call a facility or a wildlife or the Coast Guard to help rescue these turtles. Mostly it's the green turtles we see because they eat the seagrass and algae. I also have Jules here, who has a lot of tumors on her eyes and on the back of her. And I have Trooper there, who's also missing a flipper. How do they lose a flipper? Well, it could be a predator attack. Sharks are like their number one predator when they get to a certain size. And the turtles have a special way, though, of protecting themselves. They can't pull their heads or flippers inside their shell. They often dig holes in their corals or rocks, stuff their heads in the hole, tuck their flippers underneath them. Kind of makes them look like a rock. Plus, they can use their shell like a teenage mutant ninja turtle shield. They will actually put their shell right up the shark's mouth so they can't get a bite of it. So they'll have these rake lines on the back of their shell. But there's many treatments we do here: IV fluids, blood transfusions from turtle. It's usually species to species. So all those turtles down there that can't go back to wild help save the other turtles. And there are 5 turtles in the Florida waters that you see here, the leatherbacks. We don't see a whole lot of those. They're the biggest of all of them. But we do see the greens, a lot of greens, loggerheads. Loggerheads are found in the Atlantic. They're the number one nesting site in the world, is the east side of the state of Florida for loggerhead turtles. So we do get a lot of these turtles here. Green turtles like to hang down here in the Keys, the little ones, because there are a lot of shallower grass beds down here. And these turtles got a long time to live, anywhere from 80 to 100 years.